Alrighty guys, welcome back to day 4 of the cams install. So today we're going to kick off with starting the actual cam swap itself. So let me go ahead and show you what's going on here. I just saw last video we left off right here, and what we're going to go ahead and do now is the actual swapping of the cams, crank gear, full timing set, and cams basically is what we're doing. So this is going to be interesting. I am reading up on the shop manual, which I'll show you over here, on how to do this. And you need this special tool right here. So however, Mustang Lifestyle put out this video from Modular Head Shop on degreeing 5.4 and 5.8 liter GT500 cams. Now I'm not degreeing these cams, but they go in great detail on basically everything you need to know about how to install this stuff. So I'm going to be following that video, and I'm not going to be using that special tool. The reason is, after looking in here, it looks like a royal pain in the butt to try and compress each one of these springs right here and then be able to pull out these followers. So very carefully, I'm going to explain as I go and do each step. This way, there's no chance of you guys not understanding what I'm doing. Very carefully, we're going to pull everything off and put it back together basically. So I already took all my reference pictures. The main thing I'm looking for, top dead center, and this is for when it goes back together so I can reference everything. This top's camshaft is pretty much directly up and down. Over here, and this back one is directly up and down. So these two are what I'm going to be referencing when it goes back together. And then same on this side, this one, well, not really, but you can kind of see like there's certain spots. This one's pretty much directly up and down. That one's a little off. There are certain things you can look for to keep everything close. And when it goes back together, I want the new cams to basically have the same profile. So I took a bunch of pictures, took pictures of all my timing chains, everything like that, and we'll see what happens. There are obviously, you can see two colored links here, two colored links here. They don't really matter. After the engine starts turning over and running, those links move around and it's not going to line up again for who knows how many rotations. So that's pretty much that. So I'm going to start, and then obviously, again, taking my time with this, got rid of the cardboard, put down some fresh paper that I picked up for a different project, but it'll work here. And I'm going to lay out everything. So driver's side, basically everything on this side is going to be driver's side, everything else is going to be passenger side. I'm going to go ahead and actually draw a nice fun line right down the center of the paper. So this way, P for passenger, D for drivers. And this way I know where everything goes. As this goes apart, I'm going to be marking it. That's why I use the paper, so I can tell exactly where everything goes. After talking with the tuner as well as doing research, each of these cam caps are machined specifically with the motor. So they are machined first, cut a hole all the way through for the cam, and then these are cut off after the fact. That's from what my understanding of how this whole thing works. So they're very much specific to each one. However, looking at these, that one does not line up, and this one doesn't line up factory. Obviously, it's not the same piece. So I'm not entirely sure how they do this. Maybe they bolt them down and then cut it. I don't know. Either way, these things do not get messed around with. You don't move them to the other side. So they all have to go back exactly in the same spots. Same with the followers right here. The roller followers are these guys. These go back in their exact same spot, same orientation and all that. So I'm writing everything down, and we're going to be very, very precise and detailed about how this comes apart. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and figure out exactly what I want to do. Something to note, the new camshafts have a nice octagonal shape here and here for a wrench to go on when you torque these things back down. These obviously do not have that. Now, if I wasn't replacing the timing chains, I would not do this, but I am replacing the timing chains, so I am going to do this. Ford sells a tool that clamps down onto the camshafts and keeps them from moving so you can break the bolts loose. Because I'm not going to do that because, again, I don't have to deal with the, I'm going to replace the timing chains, so if there's any stretch or anything, it's not going to hurt anything. New adjusters and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and break all 4 of these bolts loose first. This one, this one, this one, and this one. Again, all my reference pictures are already taken. I'm going to break them loose first so I don't have to deal with trying to break them loose out of the motor. I think that's going to be very difficult to do. So I suppose you could clamp them in, but I'm going to break these loose first. So that's looks like that's going to be my first step. From there, I'm going to be very careful and work on figuring out how I want to do this. Broke all of them loose. Once again, carefully, the motor rotated just a hair, but again, it's all in time, it's not gonna hurt anything. This is an interference motor, so that means if the piston is at the very top and one of these valves isn't, they will contact each other. I don't know how much force it takes to hurt a valve, but contact equals bad things. So we don't want any contact whatsoever. What we're gonna go ahead and do to ensure that doesn't happen, I'm gonna go ahead and pretty much rotate the motor now to a position. The keyway needs to be at a certain position, and all the cylinders basically will not be at the very top dead center of the respective cylinder. So we're gonna go ahead and do that next. I need to rewatch the video because on this video in particular, they go over exactly what position that is, and the shop manual does not. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is rotate that motor over. Before I do that, I'm gonna take a long clean object like this. I'm gonna clean this up with brake cleaner real quick. Put it down cylinder number 1. Sorry, this was already cleaned. I used this earlier. And feel where top dead center is. I'm gonna put the extra bolt I have back in the crank to be able to rotate it easily. And we're gonna mark this with a red or a Sharpie exactly where top dead center is. So this way I know when I put it down each of these other holes, if it goes past that Sharpie line, meaning it's down further, then we're not at top dead center for each cylinder. That will prevent any kind of contact from the valves opening. And basically the reason is when this timing set comes off, these cams may snap to whatever position has the least amount of resistance. And well, we don't want that to cause a valve to shoot down and hit into anything. All right, so what I went ahead and did is, this is my stock crank bolt. It comes with a washer. I assume the other one also has a washer, the stud. However, I went ahead and bottomed out the threads by hand to make sure that I wasn't hitting the bottom of the crank. Bottomed it out, backed it up a few threads, and then went to check washer spacing. And the idea is I want to be able to use this bolt to rotate the crank, but I don't want to have the bolt bottoming out in the bottom of the threads. My thought process is it's designed to be able to clamp. It's not so much designed to just keep twisting into the crank, so I don't want to damage anything that way. And now I can put a socket on here and I can actually rotate the motor as needed. Now, obviously, I have the car in gear right now, so the motor is more or less locked up, minus a little bit of play in the clutch, apparently. So I'm going to try and basically once I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and put the car in neutral, and I'm going to rotate the motor to the position I need. I'm still waiting to figure out where that exact position is. I'm almost positive this keyway should be shirred up and down in order for it to all be lower. But now that it is at top dead center, I'm going to go ahead and measure my nail again, and then we're going to go ahead and go through all of them. Again, I understand it's metal. I'm not slamming it down or anything. Very gently, we're measuring it. All right, this is the part I'm talking about right here.
Keyway at 9 o'clock, 2 reasons I do that. 1, if the keyway's at 9 o'clock, the flat part of the oil pump drive is parallel to the floor, parallel to the main cap. So it's easy to line up. And also, at 9 o'clock, all your pistons are safely under the deck. 2 valve, 3 valve, 4 valve, doesn't matter. You can spin the camshaft itself 360 degrees, should have no piston valve issues. Pistons will all be down in a safe spot. So that's where we're gonna start.
All right, so as you just heard, that's why I am loosening everything up and getting everything ready. So now that that's done, keyway at 9 o'clock. So this is your keyway right here, this little guy. And we're gonna put it directly at 9 o'clock, which is right here. The keyway also follows this little indent on the trigger wheel. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the car in neutral, rotate the motor over to the 9 o'clock position, and then we're gonna go ahead and start taking everything off very carefully. So that's the next step anyway. Keyway 9 o'clock, and we're gonna start taking this off. And again, the reason I'm doing it this way is the tool with the motor in the engine bay, from what I've been understanding, is basically impossible to do. Not impossible, but not the way I'm choosing to do this. When we put them back on, the cams back on, again, we're gonna do it at the 9 o'clock position. Gonna be very careful with everything, but I think we can get it without any issues. So that's kind of what we're gonna go ahead and do. And yeah, let's keep going. Okay, so as you saw, I went ahead and checked them all with my little very impromptu measuring piece, but again, that black line right there is what I'm looking for. After rotating the motor counterclockwise to the 9 o'clock position, so this is now directly parallel and facing the AC compressor. I undid, the car's not in neutral right now, so it is in neutral right now, so the motor's free to turn if I need it to. Now that that's done, I went ahead and measured every cylinder to make sure that the piston is not anywhere near the top of the deck, and 2 on either side are kind of close. I went back and double checked just to see if I could rotate it a little further, but it's about as good as you're going to get. Once this one started going down a little bit, that one started coming up a little bit. So this is about the most neutral position you can get. Makes sense. Dude knows what he's talking about. So now that the engine's there, we're going to go ahead and remove the front timing drive set. So that is the next little stage in all this. So the car is back in gear now, so it should be locked in the 9 o'clock position like I was saying earlier. So next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is start taking off the timing components. Trying to figure out what makes the most sense here. I think I'm going to start with the, well, obviously we're going to start taking off the crank bolt back out. And then from there, I want to take off this outer edge of timing components. So this gear needs to come off, tensioners, guides, and everything like that. So that's all going to come off, and I'm going to lay it out on my thing behind me in the exact order that it comes off in. We got our new one out, take pictures, and see if we can make sure everything matches up properly. But yeah, so that's the next step that I'm going to go ahead and do, is get our timing stuff kind of out of the way and laid out. Actually, you know what? Well, I'll show you what to do in a minute, but I have an idea for this. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and take this stuff off next, basically all the front timing components. All right, so I took quite a bit of finagling, very carefully just worked it back and forth. There seemed to be a little bit of grit or something in there, and I kept wiping it off with microfiber, and eventually we were able to get it off. So the way I'm going to set this down, I'm going to put the timing kit here, and then everything in the same orientation, so when I put on the new one, I know which direction it goes. This little guy right here is a very brittle, tiny little washer, and the new kit does come with one, but I think I broke it when I was just wiggling this back and forth, so be very careful with that stuff. Anyway, that you can see has the markings that say front right there, so it knows direction, and this goes behind that, and I'm just going to kind of lay everything out as it comes off down here, and then we'll have our timing kit up there. So that's the plan. All right, so next thing I'm going to take off that makes sense to me is the these guys, the tensioners. So these are the guide arms. They have an 8mm here and 8mm here, and I do not see one. This is a pivot piece that sticks in there. There's 8mm on this side. I'm not sure where the other 8 one is. It might just ride on top of the tensioner. We'll find out when we find out. But I'm going to go ahead and pull these guys off next, relieve the tension on that, and that should let me continue sliding stuff out. All right, so the main timing drive is now off. And like I thought, as soon as we release tension on here, these cams snap to whatever weakest position it is, or least resistance. So that's why we had the motor the way we did. And if you're replacing the oil pump or oil pump gears, I guess now's the time to do it. But I'm not doing that. Like I said previously, talking with the tuner, everything, my use is I don't need to replace the oil pump gears. They rarely ever fail on the GT500, so again, not doing that. You'd have to take off your pickup tube. You have a bolt on the other side down here, and that is the biggest challenge with the pickup, or the thing right here from my understanding. Taking the pickup tube off, the bolts go directly into the oil pan, so you gotta be very careful about that and fish them out if they fall. And then you gotta work on getting your pump out and everything, but as it sits, not messing with it, leaving it alone. So next up, we gotta go ahead and work on our, looks like our cam removal is next. I'm looking at how this tensioner goes on here. I need to double check on the shop manual. So I can see this tensioner. All right, we got 2 bolts, but they're behind these gears. Trying to figure out the best way to do that. I also don't see any timing marks on the cams themselves, which is interesting. I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna continue working. From my understanding though, well, we'll see. I know what the shop manual says, we'll keep going. All right, so next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do, I'm gonna remove the 2 cam cap bolts right here, not cam caps, these guys right here, this one and this one. My reasoning for that is I want to get a good reference point of where these chains are in relation to each other on the cams. I wanna see where these both index at. I see one keyway, there's another one here. This way we can count the links. Actually, that's a darker link right there. I didn't catch that, actually looks better on camera. So there's a dark link right there and a dark link right here. That's what I'm looking for, one here and another one right here. So we'll go ahead and see. All right, that's good. Now at least there's index points for us to work with the new chains as well. I just want to make sure that those are there. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop off the 2 cam cap bolts next, and we'll kind of keep going. All right, so again, this is my first time doing this, but I don't know what the shit is going on right here. Looking at the shop manual, they have their keyways and they're both lined up with the cams. Looking at these, that does not look very lined up to me. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Very, very weird. As we pull more off, we'll figure out what's what. I don't know if that's normal or not, but that just comes off as weird. So next thing we're going to do, got to go ahead and compress the tensioners right here. You can see I can move my hand a little bit, and I think there's a pinhole. See if I can get you a good angle right there. We'll see if that actually does anything. It looks like where on the manual they're sticking their pin in, if you can see it right there. And again right there, so that looks to be where it is, but that keyway is just really weird. This is for reassembly, so obviously with the car top dead center, these are where the marks are supposed to be. So it looks like the keyways are supposed to face directly down the head, and these guys should be directly away from the head, the timing marks. So let's go ahead and keep going. That's just really very weird. I do not like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop off or compress the two tensioners, and it looks like these little piece of metal or something. I'll see something that fits, and then we'll go ahead and get those chains off. Okay, I went ahead and compressed them with a big fat set of lock jaws, very slowly because it does have to push oil pressure backwards. That's not normal. So I went ahead and popped in just a little nail I had on either one of these, and that is holding them. The chains are now loose. Looks like keyway crisis is averted. If you notice, they're both more or less up and down. Right here, I'm gonna take pictures of this for reference once again so we know it goes back together right. And everything is good there. I was very freaked out when I saw that thing being off. Same on this side. So they're slightly off. Again, when we put it back together at the correct position with the crank, we want it to be this way. Right now they're almost up and down, but not quite. So just kind of, you know, taking a close look at everything to make sure we're good to go. But that's that. So it looks like we're good to go. If you're getting really anal about upgraded tensioners, this is the one they're talking about that can cause issues. Apparently, they want the tension to come from the top, not the bottom on this side. You can see how this side's a little loose. Oh, that's because the camera rotated, never mind. But yeah, so I don't know what to tell you about that. It is what it is. That's how it is. So we're just going with OEM on this, but that's the next step. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and slide off these front timing chains now. That's the next step I'm going to do. Now I realize it's going to move the cams a little bit. The next part, we're going to very slowly disassemble. I'll show you the part in the video, but we're going to start removing these cam covers. Now, because there is pressure pushing up on them from the valve springs, we're not removing one at a time. The very last one would be very tight and it could bend the cam, it could mess something up. Moving all of them very carefully in sequential order, one cam at a time, just loosening them up a couple turns at a time all the way down. Same way we're going to put them back on. And that'll let everything come up nice and even, and it's not going to hurt anything. So that is, well, that's the theory anyway. It should work, but same, it's going to be a little painstaking, but gears are coming off. And we're going to work on our cam caps, which are these guys. And we're going to set all those aside over here. I'm going to be marking each one as it comes off so I know exactly where it goes and all that. So that's what the next little bit of this saga is going to be. It's not to scare you guys at all, but while I'm thinking about it, it's also meant should be known, because these are machined one with the head, if you break one or scar it or screw it up, the whole head has to get replaced. You can't just get a cap and replace that. So do not mess up the order. Don't mess up the orientation. They are numbered on the top side, but not saying what side goes to what side. So just be very mindful of that when you pull this stuff off. Orientation matters a lot. Cannot stress that enough. All right, so now for the part we've all been waiting for, cams are coming out. So like I said, I wrote down on my piece of paper over there a spot for each one of these, orientation and everything. And now we're gonna get started. So this is gonna be interesting. But like I said, one cam at a time. We're gonna take out all these bolts at the same time, very slowly, kind of work everything off one at a time. So I'm gonna do the intake one first, exhaust one, then we're gonna do that side, and we'll be out. Before we get started, I almost forgot, there are a few star bits, what I call them, Torx bits. They are all T30s. And we got one here, one there, and then I don't see any more on this side. We got two on the back side on this one over here. So just a heads up, T30 Torx is also gonna be needed. And then the rest, I think, are either 10 or 8 mil. They look like 10 millimeters. So go ahead and pull those out. This is how I'm lining them up right here. So we got all our, whoops, careful about that. So we got all our guys right here. Front of the motor, back of the motor. And then I'm just gonna kind of lay everything out down this way. So this is everything for the intake side. Next one, exhaust one's going here. Draw my line, start the exhaust side. But yeah, that's kind of how this is going. I'm thinking about it, I'll just draw it right now. So. All right, so now we got exhaust and the same deal. This is actually coming out pretty easy. I do suspect it'll go back together pretty easy. But yeah, loosening up very slowly seems to do the trick just fine. And I almost messed up. I took out this one, and then I didn't even see this one. I took out this one, I was about to take out that one. I was like, oh crap, totally missed the other two right here. So make sure these go back in the exact same spots they came out. That's the whole big deal with that. That's why I'm laying everything out like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys back on time lapse. Let's get at the rest of these. well, they're all out. Check it out. So I have everything situated. Front of the motor that way, front of the motor this way. Just makes the most sense when I pull it out. That's how it goes in. So we got all our, what we're reusing here, the cam cover or cam caps. These guys are all getting reused. We're using the rollers or roller followers, whatever you want to call them. They are getting reused. The cams are the only thing here not getting reused. So yeah, I guess the next step that makes the most sense is to go ahead and take off the, or open up rather, the L&M cams and get those set out here. So that's what I'm gonna do next. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. The other thing, the bolt that goes in that corner way down there is this guy, and I couldn't get my T30 bit on there. So what I had was a drill T30 bit, a lot shorter profile, obviously, as you can tell. And I went ahead and took a pair of lockjaw pliers, or clamping pliers, whatever you want to call them. Cranked it down real hard, and I was able to get it out with that. So when it goes back in, I'm going to put it back in the same way. We're using blue Loctite on all these bolts. That's the other thing I need to go pick up. I definitely forgot to get that. But we're using blue Loctite and everything. Everything goes back to torque, except for this one might be a little bit off one way or the other. Shouldn't be a huge issue, but again, it's not a high stress area really. It's the very end. But that one's going to be blue Loctited extra nicely, and it's going to go back in the other way because there's no way I can get a torque wrench in there. It is what it is. So that's that. Let's go ahead and swap out the cams next. Went ahead and got the new cams out. These are the L&M NSR cams once again. Put them in the exact orientation of the stock ones that I just put back in their box, and I labeled them stock. They have them in the boxes, nicely labeled. Right intake, right exhaust. Right for reference, the car is facing this way, right, left. So just so you're aware. Same thing with the way the shop manual, I went ahead and double checked on the right and left orientation. So we went ahead and said right hand exhaust and vehicle repair for camshafts. And they're showing this side of the motor, which is this side of the motor, which if facing me is this side right there. So we're good to go. No issues there. This is the MMR billet crank gear, which I'm gonna set off to the side. So next thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is pull out my new timing kit, which is in that white box, because I wanna see all the components that it came with. Lay everything out, and that's our stock one. See if there's anything we need to reuse, and then get it all put out in the right orientation. So that's the next step. All right, so got our cam drive kit lined up. This is the other thing I forgot to mention. This little washer right here, brittle, very tiny. Honestly, no clue what that's for, but I know it goes there between the crank gear and the trigger wheel. Yeah, trigger wheel. And on this one, when I was taking it off and fiddling around with it, she broke. So for no other reason, new timing kit. But we got all our new stuff here. Looks good to go. Got it laid out in a way that makes sense. I forgot to grab Loctite, so I'm gonna pick up tomorrow after I pick some up today. Get rid of that. These are the extra pieces, I guess is the best way to put it. So these two go to, what am I looking for? These two came from something. They go to this guy right here on this side. So they go in there. As for the rest of this, so these 2 pins and this little hex bolt right here go into here. Sorry, I turned this off a minute ago. But they go right here. So there's the hex little guy. Hex little, or star bolt right there. 1 pin, 2 pin. I'm leaving these in here. They're pretty stuck in there, and I have zero intention of trying to pull those out right now. Same with this little bolt. I don't know. I think it must be a plug of some kind, but I don't know. And then the other 2 pins, I don't know if this is for a different year car or what, but I can't find these guys anywhere. I don't know. I know what they're for. They're supposed to be for the pivoting arms on both of these. So I don't know if it's different year Mustang, maybe 2014 that has this. I believe I've seen them, but that's not what mine has. Mine has these guys, which, to be honest, aside from not threading in, they do look a little thicker because that's a very tiny little guy right there. So just something to be aware of. Yeah, if you guys happen to know where that goes, sweet. But by the time you let me know, I'm going to already have this thing back together. So, well, hopefully back together and not tearing it apart again. But that's that. So that's where I'm going to end off for today. And yeah, the little Ford manual's been very helpful. Again, this just may look a little messy, but it's just kind of me orientating everything and making sure I have all the parts I need, and then we'll go back on the car. Welcome back. It is the next day. So as I was saying yesterday, we've got all our timing stuff laid out. And yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get everything, well, put back together in time today. So before we get started, let me show you what we're doing real quick. So it hit me earlier, there was absolutely no reason to remove all of the follow rollers. Again, it's not, they just pop right out. So it's not like I did anything super extra, but we're putting the cam back on top of them. I'll have to put all these things back in there. So it didn't need to come out, whatever. What I am gonna do next though, I'm gonna go ahead and take my shop vac. I have a little adapter tube right here. It's not super tiny on the end, but I'm gonna go ahead and stick it over each one of these cam cap holes. Just make sure you don't have any like massive globs of oil stuck down there or anything. That would be bad. You don't wanna, what can happen is if you have too much fluid in the bottom of the hole, when you tighten down your bolt, it can squish that fluid to the bottom, doesn't have anywhere to go. As you're tightening it, it could potentially crack or damage the aluminum below it, or steel, and you know, depending on what your block's made out of, iron block, aluminum heads. So I want to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we're going to start placing our new cams and all that stuff. So yeah, here we go. All right, so next up, I also found out they didn't include a front timing seal in my timing kit. I checked the listing, it's definitely supposed to have it, but it did not. So let me go ahead and run over and show you. I went ahead and ordered one. So let me show you what we're gonna do to get the cams back on now. All right, so this is that part of the video I was talking about where he's reinstalling them.
Left side exhaust cam. Right side intake cam.
I'll have this video in the description below so you can watch it yourself.
Now this is how I think you should do it in assembly too. I have seen guys try to use the Ford tool that pushes the lap or the follower, you know, in. I would never do it like that. The valve stems are way too long above the retainer. So just lay the camshafts on here, find a good neutral spot for the lobes, then put all your caps on and slowly torque them down. We're not gonna have much resistance here. We got 2 checker springs. Typically you would have a lot of resistance, so it's something that you need to be very patient with.
All right, so pretty much there you go. That's how we're gonna do this. After talking with other people on their cam install, trying to get the back couple of them are with the tool even, it's a real pain in the butt and almost impossible. So that's that. So first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do, we're gonna go ahead and place all of our followers, or roller followers, back on top of here in the same order that we took them off in. Not order that we took them off in, but the same positions that they came off in. And we're gonna go ahead and set our camshafts down. So should be fun. Once we get all the camshafts set in, we're gonna go ahead and get all of our, well, we'll do one step at a time. First, get our followers in. All right, so I just want to show you guys, I am putting Loctite on all these bolts, just the blue stuff. And I don't know if you can tell, but you see these little ridges right here? These have to go in back in their holes. Some of them we can't quite reach it, so you gotta be very careful when you're tightening these things down and make sure that they go in nice and evenly. This is the orientation. You can see that these actually are numbered 1 through, this side I believe is 1 through whatever number goes over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1 through 12, I believe, is on this side. The numbers on the bottom face down, and the numbers on the top ones face up, and they're matching numbers on there. So just something to be aware of. They are both 1 through 12 though, so don't get your sides confused. I can see this one's 8, and that one over there says 12, which means that the numbers are overlapping. So all I'm doing, like I said, a little bit of blue Loctite. And I started on one end and then kind of switched around to the other. And the reason is I want to make sure my cam doesn't fall out. It's nice and good. I put the engine assembly lube on the cam itself on each of these bearings. So I put it on the cam itself instead of this side because these sides have oil on them. And I just didn't really want to touch it and, you know, mess stuff up. So I figured I'd just go ahead and put it on the cam side because I know that it's dry. And then we're just going to hand tight, like barely tight at all. And I'm going to start on the back side because that's a little bit higher, and just I'm going to very carefully eyeball these to make sure they're trying to go in as even as possible. And we're just going to go back and forth, kind of like how I took them off, very slowly. Time-lapse for you is going to be quick, but very slowly for me. And we're going to go ahead and slowly cinch these things down. And it's going to be the same thing on the other side. So we're good to go. I did realize a little while ago that I forgot to put Loctite on all these bolts except for the last two. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, take these guys back out, put Loctite on all of them. And then also I noticed the, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna throw Loctite on these guys. Again, we do not wanna have issues down the road. And then once that's done, we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down by hand until they're snug. I'm gonna go look up the torque spec, let you guys know what that is, and we'll get it together. All right, so I got all the bolts down hand tight. You can kind of see how they're pretty much evenly spaced between here and here. I tried to do my best all the way down the line, and obviously this back one has a lot more space than the front one. That's because that's where the cam is putting a little bit extra pressure and trying to push a spoke down. It's just the way it is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to very carefully, very slowly for me anyway, work my way along these bolts, and I'm working the back ones first. Just very little, basically half turns, full turns at a time, and slowly work its way down to where it's even with this front one. And then we're gonna do them all very slowly once again. Once they're all the way down flush, I'm gonna go ahead and figure out the torque spec out of the shop manual and the exact sequence they want them torqued down in, and we're gonna torque them down. All right, so that worked out pretty nicely. It's pretty much just working my way back and forth very slowly, very carefully. About 3 or 4 turns at a time, maybe per bolt. And then once it starts getting close, you start going in your pattern, working your way outwards from the center. And well, that's pretty much it. So pretty much kept going all the way down until you can feel it twist, and all of a sudden it'll just get a little bit stiffer and then just snug. It'll stop being slow resistance to a straight stop. and that's pretty much it. Again, very little pressure. I'm using, like, you can do it with 2 fingers and then it just stops. As you tighten some, it'll loosen up other bolts that you can continue tightening down, loosen the tight. So basically, what I'm trying to say is what you're gonna do is as it's tightening down, feel a little bit of resistance, tighten it a couple turns, and then go to the next one and back and forth until there are no more loose ones, and well, they're on there. So obviously these are way out of time. We'll get to that in a bit. But the next thing, before we go ahead and throw all our timing chains in there and everything, I want to go ahead and torque these guys down. So this is the torque sequence. They want starting in the center cap. Looks like 1, 2, 3rd from the back, and then you go in a sequence like so, and you do 1 cap at a time, fully torqued. There's no like X pattern because they're separate pieces of material. So we torque the first cap, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Top and bottom, we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna see what the torque spec is. That's what I'm missing. Install the bearing cap bolts and tighten in sequence shown to 89 inch-pounds, or 10 Newton meters. So please do not use foot-pounds, inch-pounds. Huge, huge, huge difference. So let me go and pull out my inch-pound wrench, and we're gonna go ahead and do that next. But yeah, huge difference. So the only downside to doing the cam install this way as opposed to putting them in, torquing them down, and then putting in your followers is that you can't really test if they're free moving because now there's resistance on them. So when I put it back together, if there's any kind of binding or anything bad, something's wrong, got to pull it apart, figure out what it is, and put it back together again. These should spin without the springs against them completely freely. Like you should be able to just and send it and it should spin just fine. So that is one risk that I am taking doing it this way. But it seems worth it to me. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, so let's go ahead and torque these things down. Like I said, that last one, I'm gonna do that last bottom bolt last so I get a good feel for how the torque is on the wrench. And then unfortunately we gotta do that with pliers. Because I was able to get it off with pliers, I know it's not that much. 89 inch-pounds is not much at all. So we should be fine there. I'm not super worried about it. But let's go ahead and torque these guys down. All right, so this torque wrench, obviously you guys should know what it is if you're going this this deep into the motor. Inch-pounds on this side. This is some other measurement. I'm not familiar with CM and ICM, KPS and KGS. No clue. We care about torque in inch-pounds. And we want 89. So at the 0, the way this one works, if it's zeroed, you're at, this looks to be 30, 35, 40, loosen up my lock a little bit. Yeah, where are we at? 35, that guy right there. 95, 90, 89. So yeah, we got 89 inch-pounds, and you're just gonna listen for the click. I'm gonna do this first one, you know, real time normal on camera so you can hear it. That's it. And then personally, I like to, ooh, did not tighten this guy up all the way. All right, that's 89 inch-pounds. First one's torqued, we go and do the rest of them. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start on these now. We're gonna put all our roller followers back in. We're gonna lube up the cams. They have this weird like paint that came on them. I don't know what that's all about, but I'm gonna go ahead and like pick that off. It's not a contact area, so it doesn't touch anything, but I just don't like that being there. So we're gonna get that off. That's what I was doing earlier with the lacquer thinner. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else you need to do. It helps if you listen to some real calm, relaxing music while you're doing this. This way you don't rush anything and don't make mistakes. So what we're gonna go ahead and do is get this back together. It is also getting extremely chilly out. But yeah, also I'm wearing gloves because lacquer thinner and assembly lube, and also the metal, the raw metal like this, I have found I haven't done it on this car, thankfully, but like raw metal in general will rust if you touch it. Something about the oil in your fingers. Like, actually I did do it to this car. My rear differential, all the outer casing, it was hot out, it was sweaty. I had oil on my hand when I was touching it. rusted. Like it has like little rust fingerprints on it and stuff. And it sits in oil, it's not gonna be worse, but it's just like irritating. So I don't want that to happen. I don't want these lobes getting any rust on it. So gloves are essential. All right, let's go ahead and go. I'm gonna put all the roller followers in and then we'll kind of keep going from there. All right, so cams are now torqued down. All the cam caps are torqued down, got Loctite in all of them, cleaned off the threads before I put Loctite on it. I don't know how effective it is if there's any kind of oil in there, but still I feel better than having it than not. If you're worried about any of the cam lobes, I did not put any oil on them yet, or assembly lube rather. I'm going to put normal oil on them. I'm going to basically take a cap full of oil and just make sure I get everything nice and oiled up, including the timing set before this goes back together. It'll be the last thing that happens before the cam covers go back on, valve covers. Someone got me saying it wrong. Once that's together though, we should be good. So next up is the timing set. So the way I'm going to do this, basically all the timing marks you want them to line up, obviously. We have all the timing marks here. So I kind of set these down yesterday just to see if my orientation was decent. In the shop manual, switched it up to 5-finger death punch here. In the shop manual, where are we at? They have a nice, there we go. Nope, there we don't go, come on. All right, here we go. So they have a nice diagram of how it all goes together. So my theory here, and this should make sense, I don't know why it wouldn't. I'll skip ahead a couple pages to the timing part. There we go. So, install the secondary timing chain tensioner and tighten the bolts. Oh, that's tensioners. Those only go to 89 inch-pounds as well. Install the index keyways on the camshaft to the 6 o'clock position. Okay, so you want them both on the 6. The chain assembly. Okay, so here we go. So these links right here, these timing dots, we got one. So we got, let's double check and match it to our chain real quick. My theory is that we should have a timing dot. This is one of our chains. Let's get our 2 timing gears here just to quickly match up and see how it looks. I didn't do this prior, so let's see how it looks. I'm assuming if we match up 1 dot there and 1 dot here, look at that. So just about perfect. So 1 timing link per chain. Obviously these are gonna get oil on them before they go back together once again. And yeah, so we're gonna get these two on first on both sides. That'll index the cams in the correct orientation. I do believe we need to install our, these guys first. Space know what they're called. Tensioners first, but you get the idea. So we're gonna go ahead and put the tensioners on next, and then we'll slip on these indexers. So basically using this keyway to get the cams oriented in the right direction. And then from there, we'll rotate the motor back over once I'm comfortable they're close enough to where they're supposed to be. It's not gonna be any damage with piston touching valve. So yeah, that's a long story. Let's go ahead and get the, holy cow, I'm spacing out. Been a long day. Let's go ahead and get the tensioners on next. So I'm gonna do the tensioners next, what I'm trying to say. All right, so looking at our little document there, the next thing that goes on is the timing chains. They're gonna be indexed just like that. So obviously they're not indexed like that now. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do is, I think the way I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go ahead and pop them on one camshaft. We'll do the bottom one just a little bit, just get it just hung there. And then as long as they don't hop chains on me, I'm gonna take a, the reason I like the way that these things are set up, so nice, big grippy guy right here. This wrench is super overkill for this. I do not need anything near this large to move the camshafts. But let's clean that off a little bit. It's got some stuff I don't want falling in there. All right. That was the wrong way. I'm dumb. All right, pretty close now. Hold on. Make sure I don't lose this. All right, so now we'll move both at the same time. We want an index to the 12 o'clock position. We go and start adjusting the cams. All right, so roughly there. It's a little bit off. We'll adjust them a little further as needed, but let me show you real quick, a little closer. All right, so looking at the picture once again, this is the head straight up and down. 12 o'clock position, timing dots right there, 12 o'clock in relation to the head once again. And now on this side. So it's right there. They're a hair off. It's not really gonna hurt much. So what I'm gonna do is once you get the other chain on, it also has an index on the gear, this guy right here, and once that'll catch the exact same index, it'll all be good to go. So those are where they need to be. Now let's go ahead and knock this side out real quick. Same deal. All right, so same deal on these. My chains lined up real quick off camera or out of view while I do this back here. All right, same deal on this side. Got our guys right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the top one. Notice the orientation, this little lip faces us. So let me go ahead and get it this way. So I did the bottom one first, didn't I? That makes more sense. All right, so it's on just a little. There we go. Let this hang here, don't want to skip any teeth. And I'm gonna obviously double check it when it goes back on. All right, let's rotate this guy. If you only binding, you should probably stop, just a heads up. Aside from your normal spring binding. Or not spring binding, your normal spring tension. There you go. Trying to get a good angle on this thing. There's like no good way to. There we go. All right, that's actually pretty dang close to where we want it. Just set that there for a minute. Don't fall. All right. Yeah, so we just need it to be a hair more this way. This is not going out nicely. There we go. Don't want to have any risk for issues. All right, so that one went on very nicely. It's fully seated. Make sure that side's fully seated. All right. Now we just gotta index this so these rotate that way a little more. I think we'll be good. All right, so this one's gonna fight me. There's really no good balance point. It's gonna snap back. So this one's one we're gonna do secondary. We'll have to wrench it into its proper position. But I don't know if you can tell with the glare or not, but our dots are lined up with dark links, so we're good to go. All right, I'll set this off now. All right, so next up, I want to go ahead and pop on the upper bolts anyway. We got this bearing cap right here, which goes right there. Now there's another index together. This doesn't matter, it does rotate around, so it's fine. Then we're just gonna pop this guy on hand tight for now. Why does that not reach? That's odd. What the hell? All right, I gotta make a few phone calls and figure out what's up. That's obviously not okay. I don't know what's up with that. Okay, so I pull out my stock camshaft, cam bolt, threads right in. So I'm gonna make a phone call with L&M real quick and see what the dealio is. That's not good. I don't know what's up. All right, so just got off the phone with L&M, called them up and asked them what the heck. So apparently they use 12mm bolts for all of their camshafts. So stock camshaft bolt, 12mm bolt. That goes to that's the same bolt that goes into my crank. So went up and brought it over here just to check, and sure enough, fits right in. Obviously that's a lot bigger. I'm not gonna complain. Bigger is usually better for stuff like this, extra stresses and all that crap. So it is what it is. The Ford part number, you're gonna need this. F5RZ6A340 Bravo. And that is what I'm gonna wind up picking up. And you get 4 of these guys. The other option, if you want to do ARP, which I'm not doing upgraded timing kit or secondaries, or not, you know, ragging the motor out. If I was doing a built motor, I'd 100% do this route, but a little more pricey, but they are 21 bucks each. And this is the part number, ARP 2561001 cam bolts. So I got to order those and wait for them to come in. So according to Amazon, looks like the soonest it'll be here is Friday, January 7th. So that kind of sucks. Yeah, that's going to put me behind for sure a couple days. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and place the order, and then we're going to just sit tight and happy. Actually, no, that's not true. I'm going to go ahead and finish timing everything, getting the rest of the kit in here, or the rest of the timing chains on here and everything. But yeah, we can't obviously install our cam bolts until, well, we have cam bolts to install. So let me place that order and we'll continue going with this. All right, so next thing I'm going to go ahead and pop on, this is our MMR billet crank gear right here. So this is a node weak point in the GT500s. Again, if you're hitting limiter and stuff, you're going to find it a lot sooner. We're just going to slip this guy on. Ooh, it's tight. Hang on. There's some crap in here I didn't see. Let me clean this out real quick. All right, so got it cleaned up. Put a little bit of engine oil in there just to lube it up to help slide on a little bit. And go ahead and slide this guy on. So, you know what? Should really make sure this is the right orientation. Hold on one sec. Yeah. Okay, I needed to make sure that the stock one. Actually, that's irritating. So I think that's the timing mark. Let me pull up the shop manual, double check. All right, so went ahead and double checked. So you got to index it, or not index it, but put it on with the flange facing forward. And that was indeed our timing mark. Went ahead and marked it just so it's a little more clear. And let's go ahead and slide that on now. This is gonna be fun. Let me wrestle with this for a bit and I'll show you when I get it on. Okay, slight small taps with the rubber mallet, and then I use the two camshaft spacers right here to slip over it, not touch the crank at all, and just kind of slowly knock it on. So that's installed. I think the next thing that makes the most sense to do, we're gonna go ahead and pop on our little crank pulley bolt. I don't want to put on the other stuff yet because we got to slip chains on and everything. I'm going to put the bolt on so we can rotate the motor over now. And just like before, as we're putting this in, I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Car is in gear, so the motor's locked. I'm going to go ahead and torque it just a hair with the breaker bar. Just because I'm using the breaker bar does not mean that I'm putting much force behind it at all. It's just easier and convenient because it's longer, so don't go like prying on this sucker. So I'm going to go ahead and just pop in a little bit and just get a little tension on here so I can rotate it easily and go backwards if I need to without it uncoming done. And we're good. All right, scratch that. I went ahead and adjusted the wrench real quick and left it up against something to keep this closer to where I want it. I think it's too risky to rotate the crank and the valve separate. The crank mainly because it is out of time, so I'm not going to try. That's enough movement for something to touch something if it's not perfect. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to wind up moving where now that these are indexed properly, we're going to wind up moving them again to match where the crank is currently sitting. So we're going to line up our timing marks, and then once everything's lined up, I'll go ahead and rotate it all together and make sure it's still in time. But I think that's a less risky approach to this, and it's what I'm going to go ahead and do. All right, so with this installed, the timing mark is right here. It's difficult for you to see, but it is right there. Now let's go over to our procedure, and we want position the inner timing chain onto the crankshaft sprocket, aligned one colored link with aligning the one colored link on the timing chain with the slot on the timing chain sprocket. So looking at our chains here, this solid link goes on bottom. These go on top, and the way it's gonna work, almost positive once we get here. Yeah, so you can see the two double links go over the single slot, which is that guy, in this gear. So let's go ahead and get that on here next. Let me double check the orientation of everything. They should have a breakaway on here real quick to make sure we're good. Well, I'll find it in a minute. I'll let you know. All right, I just wanted to make sure the orientation was proper. So this is going to go on. Washer goes on the flat side, which that makes sense. And looking at this one, you can tell the orientation as well. maybe you can't, but I can see it from here. And then our bolt's gonna go through here. So obviously we don't have bolts at the moment, but that's that. So I'm not gonna put these guys on just yet. My reasoning is, well, that's not true. We're gonna put on this bottom one first. So this tensioner is going on now. Upper one's not going on until afterwards. All right, so next up, I'm gonna go ahead and put in this chain guide right here. And if you're curious as to which one needs to go in, this goes in through the oil pump and up top here. And then if you're curious as to the orientation and everything, you got the manual. And these are gonna get torqued down to, if you guessed it, 10 Newton meters or 89 inch-pounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these in here and torque them real quick. All right, so I almost made a little mistake. These do not match. This side seems fine the way it is, but this one right here, see how that's touching that guy? This little spacer, I flipped it on the wrong way, so both of these need to come off and get flipped around and go back on. So yeah, so I would double checking and being real careful with everything. So I have to take this back off and do that. All right, this is why I double and triple check things. If I had found that together, that would have been bad. Right here, so you can now see all the clearance that's in between this chain. So that's not how it's supposed to be. Next thing I noticed, there's actually a dot on this gear. I was trying to use this mark right here. No, dot, that's what matters. So that makes sense. I was looking at it closer and these weren't lining up perfectly. That's because it's the wrong spot. So not super complicated, just I really got to pay attention a little better to what I'm doing, and let's go ahead and get this on once again. Okay, that was a bit much, but got it. So obviously we need our bolts still. This is held in here just by friction. It's not going to go anywhere. It's good enough for now. And pretty much got our timing marks lined up. So that dot's there, this dot's here, and our keyway is just slightly off. What's going to happen, we're going to counter rotate the motor. Once we're ready to go back top to center, everything is going to rotate that way, and we're going to line up perfectly in theory. The tensioner gets bolted down to 18 foot-pounds. That's why the bigger half-inch torque wrench was out. So those are both bolted down with Loctite on there. And yeah, so that's good to go. See if you can get a good idea. Timing gear's all lined up properly. So I realized that if I didn't get the tension on there and pull the pin to release it, just that one pin that comes out, anytime there's tension on the cams, it tries to reverse tension on the chain. Long story short, it'll slip gears on there, so we don't want that. Now that's done, let's go ahead and get the other side on. Let's put on our chain guide next, and then kind of go from there. Yeah, the upper chain guide is what goes on next. The bottom one's the tension one that flops around. So let's go ahead and do that next. All right, so next up, this is our upper guide. This one doesn't move. The tension's on the opposite side on this one. And got a Loctite on the bolts, 89 inch-pounds once again. And then this little guy goes over that weird little Allen head, or weird little bolt right here that I was talking about earlier. So let's go ahead and get this on. Get it started anyway. Set that up right there. This one started. All right, so that's hand tight now. Let's get this one hand tight. Okay. And once again, a good little click and click. So that's on now. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get our other things out we need to get. Just wanted to point out, now that we're on this side, as you can see, there's plenty of clearance in between the tensioner and the actual chain itself. So no worries there. Unlike the other side, you can see the orientation. This one pops out, the other one's the opposite. I actually think the heads are offset just a hair. I think this whole head sits a little bit more forward. That one sits a little bit more back. So just interesting stuff. But next up, yeah, so let's go ahead and get our big gear out, get those chains lined up, same deal, dot method, and then we'll go ahead and get her on. I'll do this one a little differently. We're gonna put on the tensioner first. Not gonna pull the pin, but just have it ready to be pulled. 18 foot-pounds, same deal as the other side. That's gonna go in right here. All right, let's get that on real quick. All right, so this one looks a little bit different, nothing too crazy. We got this little guy matched up with the old one. Part number faces the outside. On the other side, it says Ford Motor Company. So we want the timing dot to be facing towards us. And then same deal, we're gonna line that up with our line down there. So let's go ahead and get started. Same deal. All right, so looking at everything, it should be timed. Went ahead and pulled the pins out, just make sure you don't lose, skip any gears or anything as it's spinning over. But 2 double dots here, 1 dot over this sprocket. Can't see it, but the dark link's over the sprocket under here. So this side's just timed. Same deal, 1 dot, 2 dots, 1. And underneath here, you can see, hang on. Should be able to see the timing gear, and you can see it's lined up right there. So let me go ahead and show you one more time. Under here. So yeah, everything looks to be lined up. Motor still, it's not at top dead center, it's off to the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and rotate it over to top dead center. I don't really know if that matters the more I'm looking at it. So what's weird is like, it doesn't look identical to the other thing to the last when I took them off. And I did mess up my reference pictures. I didn't take a picture of the crank after I moved to the 9 o'clock position and had everything off like this. So that kind of sucks. I only took pictures when it was at the top dead center position. It's just difficult because I know the cam profile is a little bit different. It shouldn't be that much different, but it is a little different. So that could have an effect on stuff. I'm just trying to double check. But looking at the manual, I mean, they have their keyway there. Their pin is here. That's where mine is. You have your sprocket up in the top corner, just like mine is right there. As we're going down through everything. Yeah. So that's where they want it. At post-check, verify the correct alignment of all the timing marks. Make sure that the colored links are lined up with the marks on the crankshaft sprocket and the cammed shaft sprockets. So, I mean, that's literally how we have it. You know, they're a little bit off. This one's a little bit higher than that one. This one's a little higher than that one over there. And if we were to kind of rotate it just a hair, it'd be like perfectly lined up as this one is. I really don't see anything that looks, you know, like nothing else is screaming at me that there's a problem. Doing the camshaft left hand and right hand. Let's see. Move the timing components for additional information for timing components. So I just read that and just basically pulled them all off. Move the bolt washer and camshaft drive sprocket. Move the bolt washer and camshaft blah, blah, blah. Spacers. Compress. This is the removal process. Move, okay. And caution, timing. So lubricate the camshaft bearing caps prior to surface with the engine oil prior to installation. Okay, we did that. We use the Lucas stuff, install the secondary timing chains and tensioner bolts. We did that. Index the keyway on the camshafts to the 6 o'clock position. We did that. Like so. Install the camshaft sprockets and the chain as an assembly, which we did. Right there. So our camshaft index guys are facing down and our timing marks are up. Install the tool that basically holds the camshafts in place from moving so you can make sure that they're good. Install the camshaft driver sprocket spacer and hand tighten the bolt. Install the camshaft drive sprocket and washer and bolt and hand tighten the bolt. Tighten the 2 bolts in 2 stages. We haven't done this yet because we don't have our bolts yet. 40 or 30 foot-pounds. Tighten additional 90 degrees. Install timing drive components. For additional information, refer to timing drive components. So they're indexed properly, and then all we need to do next is actually install the front timing chains. There's nothing about where these keyways are in relation to top dead center. It's all about the timing marks. So I'm gonna go ahead and say we did this right. It's a little unnerving. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the motor over and we'll just see where everything looks. But allegedly this is where it's supposed to be. All right, guys, so it's been a couple days. Went ahead and grabbed our cam bolts finally. They have shown up. So we're gonna go ahead and, well, finish up installing these things finally. I went ahead and rewatched, well, actually before we get on that. All right, guys, it's been a few days. Cam bolts showed up and we can go ahead and tie up this timing install. Well, timing chain install and everything like that. All right, so I want to show you a couple things. First, this is the video that has the actual cam and timing from Mustang Lifestyle and Modular Head Shop built in can 5.8 liter final assembly. It is down in the description below. I highly, highly, highly suggest you watch this video. Watch it 2 or 3 times if you have to, but that's the video to watch to see the timing procedure and how they do the cam install. I watched it a couple times and I feel way better about how everything is timed now, and it looks legit. So went ahead and double checked our shop manual, again, also down in the description below. Extremely useful. Yeah, all our timing stuff is lined up. Everything looks great. I'm just kind of skipping through pages here. Our timing dots match. The cams are in the right orientation. So everything seems to be very happy. Don't have any issues there. Last thing we needed to do is these cam bolts. So these things showed up. Here is the aftermarket one, not aftermarket one. This is actually a crank bolt for the regular 3 valve, earlier 2 valves and whatnot. 12 millimeter. I don't know what millimeter that is, maybe 10, 8, who knows. But this is the stock crank, or stock cam bolt. Holy cow, I can't speak. It is cold, by the way. It is officially like 17 degrees out. So I'm gonna install these guys and that's gonna be it for this video. Part 3 is gonna be reassembling everything. But yeah, so we got 4 of these. Grab our Loctite, and then we're gonna have our washers on here and all that stuff. Yeah, so let me go ahead and show you how this goes on. All right, it's pretty straightforward. These 2 washers right here, orientation does not matter. They are identical. Go on to our caps right here, or our cams right there. This key does not matter where it is on here, so I'm gonna line it up as I can. It's gonna move. And this washer goes here. So that's that. Next are bolts. Well, actually, before we do that, let me go ahead and show you something. All right, so when you're putting bolts on with washers, it is important with engine assembly Again, I'm quoting a little bit from Modular Head Shop here, but they seem to be experts in this stuff, and their stuff doesn't blow up. So it is imperative that your washers, the face of them that touches the cam or whatever piece of material, heads, whatever, is clean like this, good to go. And you want to put a little bit of, I'm going to put a little bit of the ARP bolt lubricant, same stuff we use on our crank pulley, our little saver bolt, whatever you want to call it. Can't think of the name off the top of my head. And all we're doing with this is going to make sure that when these bolts go in, they're going to face the washer. And we're just going to spread that around. That'll make sure it spins like this. You don't want the washer spinning against the cam or anything. You want the bolt to spin against the washer so you get a proper torque reading and everything. And yeah, nothing too crazy, but just something to be aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and just rub it around like so. Make sure that's good. Same with this one. All right. And et cetera, et cetera. So let me go find out what size socket this is. Probably an 18 millimeter if I had to guess. All right, socket size, yep, 18 millimeter. Pop that guy off, and we're gonna need a torque wrench and a couple other things. Let's go ahead and back to the motor and get these things ready. All right, so first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is go ahead and hand thread all these in, then we'll go over the torque. All right, so one thing you can do, just thought about, it's also in that video. You can rotate the crank or one of the cams this way to get a little tension, and you can tell how, I don't know if you can tell, this moves just a wee bit. So you want to try and move it just a hair to make sure that this ratchet is ratcheted down all the way. You don't want, there we go. So you don't want to like pull it, but this way there's enough tension on this chain so we don't have anything slip while we're doing everything. All right, so L&M makes it super convenient. We have our bolts right here that we can crank on. Something to hold the camshaft. The stock ones you have to use a special tool. Oh my gosh, just stay. All right, stay. Anyway, so 100 foot-pounds is what L&M, they say they go ahead and torque all their cam bolts to. I also, before I contacted them, I looked up the 10.9 rated bolt just to see, and they also say 100 foot-pounds is the average torque for these. So we're going to go ahead and bring our pound wrench all the way up. And there's no stages or anything, just 100 foot-pounds, and they're happy. All right, so let's go ahead and do this. Almost one shot too. All right, one down. Go ahead and knock out the rest of them. All right, so our cam bolts are now in. 100 foot-pounds, torqued down nice and easy. I'm gonna go ahead and drop some assembly lube onto all of the cam lobes just in case you do get any more rotation. It moves a little bit. There's plenty of oil on the actual rollers themselves, but I want to make sure we're good. So I'm gonna do the assembly lube on it just so it's there for a good minute. And then assembly lube is kind of cool. It has a nice way of like almost just following all the metal around as it touches. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and put the car into drive again, not drive, basically into fourth, pull the shifter down, and we're gonna take out our old crank bolt so we can put on the trigger wheel and our tiny little washer. All right, you can already see the assembly lube's working its way, just draping over everything, which is what you want. I want something on there a little bit thicker than oil just to make sure we're all happy once she fires up. Before the valve covers go back on and put the front cover on, we're gonna go ahead and oil all this stuff down too. That's not gonna be this video though. That pretty much concludes timing the 2007 GT500 4 valve. That's that. So once again, I highly encourage you to watch the videos or the video that I showed you earlier. Link down in the description. That really goes in depth. They know what they're doing. That's what I followed to do this, and it's really not that bad once you do that. So that's that for that. Like I said, make sure you pull all your pins out. We already got ours. They all go in each of these little tensioners. And yeah, that's that. So next thing we got to go ahead and do is put our timing cover on, and we're officially well beyond the halfway point, and well, everything's got to go back together. So that's going to be next video, like I was saying. So my original plan was to start next video right now and get a head start and everything, but obviously it's not going to happen. It is so blistering cold out. I don't even, I'm just not enjoying life. Miserable. It's going to get back up into the higher 30s later, and hopefully the garage will warm up a little bit more after that. So thanks for watching this little next installment of the cam install. Pretty much they're in. We should be good to go. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident about everything. So I'll see you guys in the next part, and we'll see how far we get there. Should be the full reassembly. I think I'm going to leave tuning and first start for the video after part 4, just because we'll see how that goes. So once again, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next part of the series.